when I was talking to them, because they felt they actually work at a bilingual college, and there are a lot of unauthorized illegal immigrants amongst the population there, and they really felt like, well, why are they putting me in the position of having to turn this person in?
Right.
And that's a good question.
Victoria,
Yeah.
Are you legally extending a conditional offer of employment?
Well, I don't know if I would call it a conditional offer.
What I'm seeing here is terminate versus a conditional offer of employment. If I have an applicant and I extend them an offer for employment,
right,
and I have a work-free, a drug-free workplace,
right,
I'm extending them a conditional offer of employment, and I think it would be the same, that it would be conditional that this verification comes back.
Yeah, but it's really, it's almost a matter of vocabulary. I mean, you're offering them something, then the law is that if after you've made that offer, if they're not work authorized, they can't work. So this is just going through the steps of getting to that point.
But I just don't want the students to get confused with the language that they've been there working or doing something. This is happening up front before the employees go through training or doing anything.
Well, yes and no. Let me get to the point where there is a problem, because there is law about this in terms of what you can do while they're trying to fix the problem. But usually the person has started, because the E-Verify is being done on the 3rd day of employment. So they have started, and if they're not work authorized, there is going to be a problem. And I'll get to what the point of view of the government is, and what the law is on that.
Do they have to pay them for their work done?
Yes, absolutely. And this, it's because you'll have, at that point, if it turns out that you have an unauthorized worker, if you were to not pay them for the work they've done, you will be violating wage and hour laws. So you've already potentially violated immigration laws. You don't want to have two laws violated. So it's really, you have to pay them. Okay. Okay, so this is what the tentative non-confirmation looks like. It's there in the circle, and it could just as well be a DHS tentative non-confirmation. It's just that this screenshot is the Social Security one. And I think Social Security ones are going to be very common, because a lot of times somebody gets married and they change their name, but they don't change it with Social Security. And I think a lot of problems are going to come up with that, because it's going to be put into the system, and there's not going to be a match because this new name is not in the system. All right, and you'll see how it says notification to employee down there in Spanish and in English. And what the employer will do is double click on that, and they're going to get a pre-printed, already populated notice that they give to the employee. And then there's a place that says initiate Social Security referral, and they're going to get another pre-printed form that they give to the employee that's going to tell the employee what to do, either to go to Social Security or to call DHS, because DHS is too far to go to. So that's kind of, you know, it makes it a little bit easier on the employer. Okay. All right, so I think I've kind of gone through this. What you do if you get a TNC is you call the employee, or the employer calls the employee in, tells them about it, prints the notice. The employee decides if they're going to contest or not contest, right? And then they print the referral, so the employee knows what it is they're supposed to do, where they're supposed to go. And then they have 8 federal government work days to fix the problem, or actually not to fix the problem, but to go to the agency and try to fix it. And that's where it's no longer the employer's responsibility. What happens is that the agency, when the employee hit initiate referral, the agency's got some kind of electronic notice, and they have to keep track of those days. It's not for the employer to be constantly, you know, did you go to Social Security yet? It's for the agency to fix. Go ahead.
When I see 8 federal government work days, there's nothing in immigration that takes place in 8 days, at least from my experience. And so are they making it a point to push this stuff through? Or?
Yeah, this kind of stuff is just checking. And this they can do. I mean, I'm a lawyer, so I know that they do nothing in 8 days.
Right,
but they can do this kind of checking in 8 days. And they supposedly they do. You know, and then what they do is they go back into the system and they update it. So if for some reason the person gets more than 8 days, then they should put in the system, well, now they have another 3 days. So the employer shouldn't have to be following up on it.
And they'll check to find out whether the applicant has another visa pending, because typically if they have paperwork in process, then that should extend their status until there's a decision made on there.
Yeah, they're going to, portability you're talking about. Yeah, they're going to be checking on that. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, this is what the pre-printed notice looks like, and this is where I was talking about the, they can pick, contest or not contest. They check it off, the employer signs it, they give a copy to the employee, and they keep an original. Okay. And that's the referral notice. That's what's telling them where to go and what to do. And it's also, by printing this, you're also telling the agency, okay, expect this person, the clock starts running now, you know, and then the agency has to keep track of it, and the agency has to go back into E-Verify and fix it. And all the employer has to do is check up on it.
Can the employee continue working while the process is going?
Yep. Yeah, that's the next, that's coming up. Okay. So while that's going on, the employee continues to work. And so it's in the government's interest to do this quickly. And if it turns out that they're work authorized, they still get paid, or if it turns out that they're not work authorized, they still get paid for that whole time. And this makes good sense because usually it's not the employee's fault. It's usually the government's fault or the employer's fault. So it makes sense for the employee to be able to continue working. Okay. Okay, in theory, it would be nice if the employee went to the employer and said, okay, I fixed it, but there's no legal requirement that they do that. It's really, it's the obligation of the agency to put it into the system and then the employer to check on the system. All right. And what's going to happen after these days and after the employee has gone through whatever he's supposed to do is that the system will be updated, and it's going to be updated with one of these possibilities. Employment authorized, which would be great, that means good to go. Final non-confirmation, which means that you can't, the employee has to terminate the employer has to terminate the employee, or review and update employee data and resubmit. And this is why I was saying that it's so important that there not be clerical mistakes, because what that means is that Social Security looked at the card and they looked back into the E-Verify system and they saw that the employer had a clerical mistake, was maybe off by a digit, and they're saying, okay, you know, do it again. We'll use the right Social Security number this time. So now this poor employee has had to go and sit, if anybody's been to a Social Security office, it's not much fun, sit there for a couple hours and be all stressed out, and the employer had to be looking into the system. All of this work was like needless. So that's why it's important that the employer makes sure that it's correct. And that's also why they want the employee to keep getting paid during those days, because it's likely not their fault. Okay. All right. But now the employer still has to resolve all this in the system, which sounds like a needless step. And I know from employers I deal with that they're forgetting this step. But they have to basically move the query out of the system, or else the system gets really, really slow. All right. So they have to go back in, and this is employment authorized. So it's simple. They have those highlighted choices. They'd hit resolved authorized, or self-terminated, maybe the person gave up and found another job, or invalid query, and they hit submit resolve case, and they're done. Okay, now I'm going to get to the question you were asking. All right, in 2007, they added a new feature that they hadn't had before. It's called the photo screening tool. So if a person gives either an EAD or a green card to the employer, it's going to kick in this photo screening tool. This is what's going to make the photo screening tool work. And if any of you have ever seen those documents, they have pictures. And apparently, what's happening is, like as an attorney, if I'm trying to get a green card for somebody, I have to ask